Hi everybody, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. Today we're going to be talking about consumer surplus. And this is looking at the impact on a consumer of the price of a good. And whether your consumer is going to be happy with the price that they're paying, or sometimes you can look at a change in the price and how it will affect the consumer. The definition of this is the difference between the price a consumer is willing and able to pay for a product and the price they do pay. So if you imagine somebody's going shopping, when they're going shopping, they have their demand curve. Remember, it's downward sloping, down for demand. And for this, we need to touch the y-axis up here at the top. You'll see why in a moment. This is the demand curve. And we know already consumers demand products, and this curve illustrates the price that they're willing to pay for different quantities. So the highest price that they're willing to pay is up here. And in fact, if it was right at the axis, it would be demanding nothing. But this small quantity, they're willing to pay this price for it. And then at higher quantities, lower prices. And in any situation, if you take a price in this market, for example, here at little p, the consumer surplus is the difference between the price that they actually pay and the price, let's call this A, that they were willing and able to pay. And consumer surplus is always about triangles, and you can see in the diagram on the right that when we've put in the price that this person is paying, if we put in a B here, the area of the consumer surplus is PBA. PBA. You can say these in any order. It's better to label the corners of the shape instead of shading, because then it's nice and clear the area that you're talking about. So to start off with, you look at the price they are paying, then you go over to the demand curve because consumers demand products. You move along the demand curve to make your triangle and then back down again. And this shows you what your consumer surplus is. If in this situation the price fell to P1, we can then look at the impact on the consumer surplus. And we can see that if the price falls, this is obviously better for the consumer because they're paying a lower price in comparison to the price that they're willing and able to pay for the product. And therefore, their consumer surplus has got bigger. And if we label this corner, let's call that C. Remember, don't use D because we already have that, or P or Q. So the new consumer surplus at price P1 is now P1CA. P1CA. And our consumer surplus has increased. And this makes sense because the person is now paying a lower price. And in an exam question, they might ask you for what the old consumer surplus was, the new consumer surplus, or they might ask you for the change in the consumer surplus. And in this case, consumer surplus has increased by, the area it's got bigger by is P1CBP. It's grown by this much. So P1CBP. And you can talk about these in any order. You could start at P, then P1, it doesn't matter, as long as you describe this shape here.